You ever get that feeling like you're playing a game, but you don't really know all the rules? You wonder, am I on track? Am I hitting the right milestones at the right time? I think it's a question pretty much everyone asks themselves.
Well, guess what? It turns out an educational psychologist actually created a kind of roadmap to help us figure all that out. And that's what we're going to dig into today. This map, which is called Havighurst's theory of developmental tasks. So the whole thing is built around this core idea of a developmental task. What is that? Well, just think of it as a skill or a role that society, kind of expects us to get the hang of at a certain age. If you nail it, awesome. It usually leads to happiness and makes the next level of the game, so to speak, a whole lot easier. But if you struggle with it, the next set of challenges can feel way tougher.
And the guy who came up with all this was Robert J. Havighurst. Now, his goal wasn't to give us this super strict checklist for life. You must do this by this age. Not at all. It was more about giving us a clear, helpful way to understand how we grow and change right from the very beginning.
So he broke down our entire life into these 6 main stages. You can see them here. This is basically our map for the whole journey. We're going to go through each one and see what it asks of us, starting from when we're babies all the way through to our older years.
Okay, so let's jump in right at the start. Part 1 is all about what Havighurst called the foundational years. This is everything from birth right up until we're about to become teenagers. It's a super critical time where we're building the absolute bedrock of our skills and, how we understand the world.
First up on our map, infancy and early childhood. This covers that period from birth up to about age 6. And during this time, it's not just about getting bigger physically, right? We're actually tackling some of the most basic, fundamental tasks of just being a person.
Just look at these first tasks. They are absolutely essential. We're talking about gaining basic trust, learning to walk, starting to talk. This is why the #1 recommendation for this stage is so important. A loving and secure environment isn't just a nice little bonus. It is the foundation for everything that comes next.
All right, so once we've got that foundation of trust, our world just explodes. It gets so much bigger as we hit the next stage, childhood, which is roughly from ages 6 to 12. This is where the map starts to lead us out of our homes and into this brand new social world.
And like I said, our world gets way bigger. The main job here? Learning to deal with school, making those first real friends, and figuring out how to manage ourselves. This is really where we learn how to get along in a world that's much bigger than just mom, dad, and our siblings.
Okay, so those early social skills set us up for part 2, which, let's be honest, can be a pretty wild time for a lot of us. The years of self-discovery. The big question isn't just how do I fit in with everyone anymore? Now it becomes, who am I, really?
And you guessed it, that means we've hit adolescence. We're talking about ages 12 to 18. The main goal here isn't just about following the rules anymore. It's about figuring out who you are, sometimes inside the rules, and let's be real, sometimes by pushing against them.
So the big job is figuring out who you are, getting that personal identity locked down. It's also when we start thinking about a future career and developing a sense of responsibility to others. And this all ties directly into the core advice for this stage: encourage exploration. Things like school clubs, sports, volunteering, they're not just fun activities. They're actually the places where teenagers get to try on different hats and build who they're going to be.
Okay, so once we have a better handle on who we are, we blast off into the next phase, young adulthood. This is roughly between 18 and 30, and the focus totally shifts. It's less about discovering yourself and more about actually building a life for that person you've discovered.
This is like the major construction phase of life. You're starting a career, finding a partner, maybe thinking about having kids. You're basically putting down the main pillars of your adult life. And that's exactly why learning how to build healthy relationships with good communication and trust is just so incredibly important here.
All right, let's head into the second half of our map. Part 3, the years of contribution and reflection. So we've built the foundation of our adult life. Now the jobs start to change. It's more about maintaining everything we've built and starting to think about our bigger impact on the world. And that brings us to the single longest stage on this whole map, middle age. We're talking from about age 30 to 60. Havighurst said our focus kind of shifts here, away from that intense building we did in our 20s, and more towards maintaining, guiding others, and contributing.
The key thing to notice here is how our focus broadens. It's not just about our own career and our own family anymore. It starts expanding out to the wider community. And that's exactly why contributing, through things like volunteering or mentoring, becomes such a huge part of this stage.
And that brings us to the final stop on our map, old age. For everyone 60 and up, the developmental tasks shift one last time. Now, it's all about adaptation, reflection, and finding a new kind of purpose.
Really? This stage is all about adapting. Adapting to life after work, adapting to changes in our health, and really taking the time to think about what our life has meant. And that ties in perfectly with the main advice here: find fulfillment by trying new things, exploring new hobbies. The goal isn't to just stop, it's to find new ways to keep growing.
So, okay, that was a whirlwind tour through an entire lifetime, right? So what's the big takeaway? What does this theory really teach us, and why should we even care about this roadmap today?
Let's run through some quick, common questions. Is this thing universal? Well, the basics are, but of course, culture plays a huge role in the specifics. What if you don't quite nail a task? It can definitely make the next stage a bit tougher. What helps the most? Things like your family, your education, and having good social support. And remember, this isn't just some dusty old theory. It's actually used today in education to create school programs that help students develop in the best possible way.
And that really brings us to the end. After looking at this whole roadmap of a human life, it kind of leaves us with one last question to chew on for you personally. Which developmental task are you working on right now?